He's a regular part of the show. You know him from Get Your News On with Ron. It's Ron Placone. Hey, Ron, how are you?
What's up, Jimmy? Happy New Year. And look, this is the United States. Nobody should be telling anybody to go fuck themselves unless it's the vice president doing it. All right? Dick Cheney made the rules. We follow them.
Oh, my God. That's right. He did that on the floor.
Yeah.
He did it on the Senate floor, told people to go F themselves. Well, here we go. Let's get into the story. So, by the way, the lighting looks fantastic on your show now.
Oh,
Look at that. I don't know, would you get another light?
It might be the daylight, but we'll see. I mean, I did make some rearrangements.
Is that what it is? You got daylight coming in?
It might just be daylight, yeah.
Oh, well, it looks great. All right, so we got to do the show during the day now. I remember we had Max Blumenthal out one time, and as we started the interview, the sun was over here, and it started to like it was just a sliver. He had like a curtain open, and so the sliver kept moving across his face. It's very slowly. Anyway, all right, let's get to what happened, Ron. You saw what happened. So we've been pushing hashtag force to vote. What is hashtag force to vote? The Democrat progressives, just a couple of votes. If they withhold them from Nancy Pelosi, she can't become speaker. So we're telling them to demand a hashtag force to vote for Medicare for all. Nancy, if you want their votes to become speaker, you have to agree to bring up Medicare for all for a vote on the floor in the middle of a deadly pandemic. They weren't asking for anything before we came up with this idea, Ron. You know that? People go, well, they just disagree on strategy. You guys didn't have a strategy. They had no strategy. No one was extracting a vote for anything for their vote for Nancy Pelosi as speaker. So this idea that the DSA has a different strategy, they don't have a strategy. This idea that AOC and the squad had a different strategy, there was no strategy. No one was ever going to think about extracting anything for their vote for Nancy Pelosi for speaker until Jimmy Dore show brought it up. And so if they got a problem with this strategy, I want to know what their strategy is. And you know what their strategy is? Nothing. DSA has no strategy. AOC has no strategy. You know what? Who it does? The Jimmy DSA has strategy. That's right. The Jimmy DSA.
I like that.
I like that. So that's the kind of thing that's crazy making. And so they weren't extracting anything. And AOC engaged Justin Jackson, and she came up with a bunch of bad reasons why she wouldn't do it, and everyone saw through them. So then she went and did a sweetheart interview, a softball interview on The Intercept with Jeremy Scahill, where he didn't know how to ask a follow-up question. And that it didn't stop. She thought that would put out the fire. It didn't. It just that keeps trending and trending. And so finally, she came out with this. And Ryan Grimm ran from The Intercept, which they have a nice sweetheart access deal with AOC and the squad. So here it is. He comes out to run a little interference for her. He says progressives in the House have won a rules change that would allow Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, or other big-ticket agenda items to be exempted from PAYGO. This was a necessary step in opening the way for it. Well, what the point of this is to get people off the tail of the squad to do hashtag force to vote. But unwittingly, I think, Ryan, what he's doing here is actually making the case for hashtag force to vote, because now we've got rid of the hurdles that would stop it, and now so we could just go do it. We could do Medicare for all. We could do the Green New Deal. We could do other big ticket items. So what they're trying to do is say, look, that's what they negotiated. They got something for their vote. That's garbage. That actually makes it more reasonable that they do hashtag force to vote. Would you agree with that, Ron?
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. And I think like your interview with Ben, you guys kind of summed up the level of win that it was. And yeah, because it applies to COVID or climate, which I think it's kind of sad, just on a side note, where it's like where our government is just like, okay, we'll spend some money if humanity's at stake. I mean, if the climate is going to completely collapse, we'll do something. Or I know this pandemic really sucks. If there's a little bit of something we have to do, we'll do that. There's your exemption. We're like, yeah!
That's exactly. Well, here's what Dave Dayen says. He says, I don't really see Medicare for all impacted by these changes.
Yeah, because you need to make the case that it's connected to COVID.
Yeah. So that's it. So you'd have to make the case that if you did a healthcare thing, it was connected to COVID, right? Okay.
Yeah, which those are easy dots to connect, but,
right.
Who knows?
So here's what she came out. So she retweeted Ryan Grimm. This was not coordinated. So she retweeted Ryan Grimm. She says, one of the first votes I ever cast broke with my party over House rules that strangled transformative legislation for working class people and climate. It was honestly terrifying. The first vote that she cast was for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker, just so you know. The first vote AOC did in Congress was going against her campaign promise to Glenn Greenwald that she would not vote for leadership. She did vote for leadership. She voted for Nancy Pelosi. That was her first act, her first vote. Now, maybe her second vote, she says, one of my first votes. You only get one first. You know, hey, where's your third first vote? You only get one. You know, one of my first votes? No, you only get one first. And that was for Nancy Pelosi. So then you're following one of the early votes, not first, early votes. She broke with her party, and it was honestly terrifying. Really terrifying? Come on. That, you mean doing the thing we sent you to do? The thing that you couldn't wait to do? The thing you said you wanted to cause a ruckus?
That she gets health care
That she gets health care for?
paid?
Now the Congressional Progressive Caucus has pushed these critical rule changes in the House negotiations. I'm grateful for Representative McGovern's leadership. So they're trying to do a head fake. So this is the head fake. Look, this is what we got for our supporting Nancy Pelosi. As we just had Ben Spielberg on, he said that's nothing. That's basically nothing they got. And it is basically nothing. Ryan Grimm's trying to make it sound like it is something. It isn't. But they've got that straight open door policy with AOC to come on their podcast whenever they want. So that's why they do this. But this is crazy. So this is what they're going to try and pull. So tomorrow, AOC is going to stand up and say Nancy Pelosi's name into a camera to vote for her. That's happening. That's what. And then, so here's the bad part. No, so that's, we expected something like this. We expected a bullshit thing like this, and we got it. But here's the part that's in the headline of this video clip. Here's the part that you've been waiting for. She said that, and then she said this. She said, and to be 100% honest, and she put an emoji there, the 100% part, and to be 100% honest. So whenever someone starts off a tweet with, and to be 100% honest, and they make the extra effort to get an emoji in there, you know some bullshit is coming your way. And here it comes. She goes, it was hard during this to be targeted and marred as some sellout enemy of the people over a late tactical disagreement over one floor vote. You mean you couldn't take the heat from a fucking YouTube comedian? This is what the thing that was hard for you? A YouTube comedian yelling in his garage in Pasadena about the thing that you campaigned on? That was what was hard? No, what was hard was that we sniffed you out and we're shining a light on the fact that you're abandoning the people right now. And you're not doing what you can do. And you're lying. You're going against the campaign promise. So, and then she totally diminishes it by calling it over one floor vote. Before she was in Congress, she was screaming we needed a floor vote for Medicare for all. I'll show you those videos in a second. But this was her signature issue, and she demanded a vote while she was campaigning. And now that we got it, she goes, it's just a tactical disagreement over one floor vote. Does anyone not see through this? Ryan Grimm doesn't, but does anyone else not see through this? I mean, besides people at the Intercept. But everybody else does, right? Right? And here it comes. Here comes the big part. She says, also a bummer to see figures excuse comments like F her and F anyone who protects her. That's not tone. That's violence. She's equating speech with violence. Someone saying F off or F her, she's saying that's violence. And let me just say, I get called all kinds of things all the time, every day. They impugn my character. They say I'm taking money from foreign dictators. They say I'm a right-winger. They say I'm this. They say I'm they say every unbelievably horrible thing. They put my house in a paper. They tweet that out. What else? What haven't they done to me? And I'm not an elected official. I'm just a YouTube host. I have no power. And I'm going to play the world's smallest violin for you. Someone said off to a congressperson? And you're going to call that violence? Do you know what that does? That demeans people who are actually victims of actual violence. I would never call what's been happening to me the last 3 weeks on Twitter violence, or what they've been printing in the newspaper, or what people have been doing on videos. People have been screaming into cameras saying they want to take me and beat me up in a parking lot. But somehow one of the most powerful people in the world with 11 million Twitter followers and $100,000 speaking fees, somehow she's a victim of me? She's a victim of violence. So this is the Hillary Clinton trope. This is the Bernie bros are mean. Bernie bros said something mean. That's what she's doing. AOC gets called horrible things on a daily basis by people on the right and people who don't like her, just like me. They say racist, sexist things about her, and it doesn't bother her. But being called a sellout by another progressive is bothering her so much that she's complaining about it on Twitter. Right-wingers say the most disgusting things to her all day long, and she beats their ass back on Twitter. But I'm calling her out accurately, and that is causing her real consternation. Do you see what's happening? It's the proper thing to do, and it's working. Maybe being called a sellout is bothering her to the point that she's now complaining about it on Twitter. Maybe, just maybe, that's because she knows #ForceTheVote is the right thing to do, and she has a bit of a guilty conscience. I don't know if it's a guilty conscience, but she's smart enough to know she's being revealed. There's a spotlight on her not doing what she said she was going to do, and she doesn't like it. And she's going to do every underhanded, cheap thing in the world to try to get out of it, including try to intimate that I'm some kind of a maniac doing violence instead of a maniac who's just yelling in his garage. I'm a pissed off constituent who helped you get elected. That's what I am. And if you can't take swear words, well, here's what I say. Translation, I'm voting for Nancy Pelosi again without doing what I repeatedly promised I'd do. Fight for Medicare for all and force the vote. There will never be a better time to do this. I know it's immoral to not leverage power in this historic moment. Too bad Bernie bros are mean. And do you want to know how I know that this is bullshit garbage and that she's lying? She's not just gaslighting. She's lying. To get out of this, because they got caught having no strategy, and they got caught not rolling over for the establishment again. They got caught. And so that's why she's doing this underhanded, creepy shit. And you want to know how I know it's garbage? Because here's Rashid Tlaib. Here's how they talk about other politicians.
People love you and you win. Woo! And when your son looks at you and says, Mama, look, you won, bullies don't win. And I said, baby, they don't. Because we're going to go in there, we're going to impeach the motherfucker.
So Rashid Tlaib says we're going to impeach that motherfucker. And apparently that's not violence. Look at the violence she's committing. She said motherfucker. And then here she is outside at a big rally in the middle of daylight. And she gets the crowd to say it. Watch this. She gets the crowd, not only her saying it in her garage, she's out in public in a park screaming it into a microphone with a loudspeaker, and she tries to get everybody else to say it. Watch this.
Impeach them!
Impeach the MF. There it is. And I don't have a problem with that, by the way. They can do that all day long. I don't care. I don't have a problem with that. You call the most powerful guy in the country an MFer? Go ahead. New Congress member creates stir by saying of Trump, we're going to impeach the MFer. Rashid Tlaib went there right away. Okay, there it is. But guess what? Ocasio-Cortez jabs the GOP's full outrage over Congresswoman's profane speech. So when they do it, and you get upset, it's full outrage. But when I do it, it's violence, literal violence. Full outrage is only acceptable when you want the Progressive Caucus to do something that would make their colleagues uncomfortable. So here's from that article, from the Washington Post article. You want to see this? Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez came to the defense of Rashid Tlaib, denouncing what she called full outrage over profane language Tlaib used while calling the president for President Trump's impeachment. Republican hypocrisy at its finest, saying that Trump admitted to sexual assault on tape is just locker room talk, but scandalizing themselves into faux outrage when my sis says a curse word in a bar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wrote. GOP lost entitlement to policing women's behavior a long time ago. Wow. Speaking directly to Rashid Tlaib, Ocasio-Cortez asked, I got your back. So isn't she doing the exact same thing she was accusing Republicans of doing, of having full outrage over swear words in a bar? Isn't that what she's doing, the exact same thing? So now you're outraged at swear words on a Zoom meeting? Here is the chairman of the California Democratic Party, or the guy who was running this meeting. I don't know if this was actually, I think it might have been, though. This is when we took over the California Democratic Party, the progressives did, and they had super delegates at the state level, so they canceled out what we did. They could just get rid of it. And so the progressives were making a stink, including the nurses. And watch what they said to the nurses.
Hey, shut the fuck up or go outside, all right?
And people cheered. He told progressives and nurses who were protesting, shut the fuck up or go outside. And everyone cheered. But that's violence, though, according to AOC. She really stepped in it this time. And here's Ro Khanna, who came on our show to address this very point of AOC being a snowflake like this. And using the womankind, falsely using and disingenuously using this bullshit card of violence is happening to me because someone's in their garage. A constituent is yelling about me not doing what I campaigned on. Here's what Ro Khanna says about that.
I'd say, Jimmy, I still believe in the First Amendment. I still believe that the press isn't supposed to be friends with politicians, that you're supposed to ask tough questions. I go on Fox News. I go on other places. And you know, there was a conference call that leaked at the House Democrats, and I never leak, and I don't think people should be leaking, but it was all woe is me. And I said, look, being a United States congressman is like being in the 0.00001% of privilege of humanity. You're in an extraordinary level of privilege. So if you're going to have tough questions from the press, or you're going to have someone say some not nice things about you, deal with it. Get over it. There's real people with real problems. So I think it's great. I mean, the people who were at my team were saying, why are you going on Jimmy Dore? I said, because he's a journalist. He asks tough questions. And if you can't answer it, then you should be in some other line of work.
So that's Ro Khanna kind of pouring some water on AOC histrionics or hysterics. I don't know what the word is. I'm not smart enough. I'm a jagoff.
I mean, hysterics works. That works.
I mean, you're so now when people are actually a victim of violence, you're ruining it for them. It's just like when they called Bernie Sanders a sexist. Remember when they all did that? Elizabeth Warren did that. Bernie Sanders is a sexist. So now when there's actually a sexist, now you've ruined it. You're the boy who cried wolf. So what AOC is doing is being the boy who cried wolf. Right, Ron, would you say?
Well, yeah. And, you know, when I was thinking about it earlier today, I kind of thought, man, what a weird time we live in where we have, higher civility expectations for comedians and creators than we do for elected officials. But then I thought about it further, and I'm like, in other ways, this is really nothing new when you go back in history. When neoliberalism was just starting to be on the rise, it's sort of just passively really crept in a bunch, but people were really talking about 7 words that George Carlin was using.
Yeah.
Later on in the 90s when Bill Clinton was dismantling the media and doing these horrific trade deals and all kinds of other things we're still feeling the disastrous effects from. People were kind of just passively letting that go because he was a cool guy with a saxophone. But a lot of people were really upset about Marilyn Manson lyrics. And here we are yet again, and I think it's time as a society to rethink our priorities.
Yeah. 45,000 people a year die from lack of health care. That's violence. Nobody ever died from someone telling a politician to go F themselves.
Bingo.
Everybody, and I guess it's a very selective line of morality. You can say F you to some politicians, but to other politicians, it's violence. Like, here's Robert De Niro.
I'm going to say one thing. Fuck Trump.
He says it like he's the first person who thought of it.
Whoever thought of that. And he says it on live television, and everybody cheers.
He's been in office for 2 years. No one's ever come up with this one. Hear me out.
Stephen Colbert says, fuck you to President Trump. So if they disagree with the president, it's okay. And then AOC goes on his show all the time. I don't think she's accused of, hey, quit doing violence to other politicians. Do you think she said that? Look at this. America's nice guy, Jim Gaffigan, hilarious comedian. Love Jim Gaffigan. He says, America's nice guy finally says, fuck you to Trump supporters on Twitter. And I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't say F you to a politician's supporters. I would say F you to the system that gave them such poor choices. That's where we go. But I get what he's doing. But again, everybody does this. The point, and I'm not against Jim Gaffigan should be allowed to do that however long he wants to do, how many times he wants to do it. I have a different view. I would go after the system, but whatever. You're allowed to do that. He's not committing violence against Trump voters. It's not. Everybody does this all the time. Want to hear Bill? Listen to Bill Maher.
You heard what she said? Now they fined CBS $1 million. $1 million for Janet Jackson's nipple. Think what they could get for Hillary Clinton's cunt.
Is that guy committing violence? Or is that a raunchy joke? That's a distasteful, raunchy joke. And look, that's a conservative. You want to see them all laugh? Look at they're all laughing. Look at. You heard them all laughing. Here's Louis Black. And what I've said about Louis Black, I love Louis Black. I like him a lot. He's a great comedian. Nice guy. Is that he screamed at the top of his lungs. That was his whole gig, that he would foam at the mouth and scream. And no one got upset. No one said he was doing violence. Why? Because he wasn't really challenging power in a way that we are. Here's what he said. Nobody ever made a stink out of this. Watch this.
Turn to the left, and Mitch McConnell. If I'm ever near that fucking son, I'm going to punch. I mean, you know, we're not supposed to be violent in what we say anymore.
Yeah,
that son of a bitch, I'm going to punch in the face. I mean it. Besides, not his politics. I don't give a shit about it. I turned to my mother and said, would you like your photo taken with Dick Cheney? I'm not getting my photo taken with that son of a bitch. Never. And then she says, and besides that, there's John McLaughlin of the McLaughlin Group was sitting 15 feet away. And she says, I got to get over to that son of a bitch and tell him what a turd he is.
That's violence. That's all violence. That's what he's describing. Here's Samantha Bee, Hillary voter. Here's how she talks to other women. She's talking about Donald Trump's daughter.
Americans are finally paying attention. Well, most of us. Ivanka Trump, who works at the White House, chose to post the second most oblivious tweet we've seen this week. You know, Ivanka, that's a beautiful photo of you and your child, but let me just say, one mother to another, do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless c***. He listens to you.
So this idea that anybody else talks differently than Jimmy Dore is ridiculous. Okay? I could do this all day long. I could show it over and over and over. I could show you Louis Black and Bill Maher and Samantha Bee. I could show you and Stephen Colbert. I could show you over and over and over. And the reason why I connect with people is because I say outwardly what people feel inwardly. Here's Nina Turner to back me up on that. Here's what Nina Turner says about Jimmy Dore.
Jimmy Dore say stuff that I can't say,
I know.
So he my alter ego.
All right, I'll see you.
Jimmy Dore's my alter ego. He says things I can't say. Want to hear that again? I do.
Jimmy Dore say stuff that I can't say,
I know.
So he my alter ego.
All right, I'll see you in a little bit. Thank you so much.
Hey, voting for Nancy Pelosi without demanding something in return is violence. In the middle of a deadly pandemic and an economic depression that nobody's ever experienced. That's violence. I lost my employer-provided insurance in March. Now I'm rationing my meds. I endure excruciating pain while waiting tables at a restaurant that doesn't offer benefits to part-time workers. That is violence. AOC, that's violence. Comrade Misty, she says, sarcasm starter says, oh, F off. 45,000 people die every year from lack of health care. That is violence. I agree. And you can tell politicians to fuck off. Especially when they're lying to you. You know what else is a bummer? Dying of cancer because you can't afford a doctor. So she says, she was saying, also a bummer to see figures excuse comments like F her and F anyone who protects her. That's not tone, that's violence. He says, you know what else is a bummer? Dying of cancer because you can't afford a doctor. Do you see how she's wrapped up in her own problems and not yours? Do you see the Obamification of AOC happening right in front of your eyes? Because I do. Glenn Greenwald sees it. Ron, do you see it?
I do see it. And you know what? Here's just kind of a general summary here. Since there's a new year upon us, if you are more upset by the word fuck than you are that we live in an economy based on war and we don't have the healthcare system other countries have figured out decades ago, well, it's a new year. It's time to rethink your take on the world.
Time to rethink what offends you.
Yeah.
If AOC thinks mean tweets are violence, what does she think appropriating $30 million to overthrow Venezuela is? Because that's what was just in that last bill they voted for. $30 million to overthrow Venezuela. Isn't that violence? That you're a part of? No, what's violence? These are all people coming back at AOC for trying to pretend that she's a victim of some comedian's words. That she's a victim of violence because I'm calling her out. Do you see how desperate she is? Do you see how this works? Because I'm accurately calling her out? I'm not ad hominem. I'm calling her out. You're selling out. You're abandoning the people. You're selling out your own campaign promises right now. That's called a sellout. And that's what AOC is doing. And she's going to get up tomorrow and look right in the camera and say, I vote for Nancy Pelosi without getting you anything. And that's a sellout. And I'm going to keep calling her a sellout because I know it bothers her. It bothers her. You know what doesn't bother her? All those horrible names and racist things that the right wing says about her. That doesn't bother her. You know what does bother her? When you accurately call out when she's a sellout and she's selling you out tomorrow. When you see this video, she probably will have already sold you out. She's going to get up, look in the camera, and say, I vote for Nancy Pelosi as speaker without getting anything for you. In the middle of a deadly pandemic, in the middle of the biggest economic crisis you've ever lived in your life. And I'm not just saying her, but she's the one who's taking this fight on. I'm talking to all of them. Ro Khanna should be doing this. Jamal Bowman should be doing this. Rashid Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Mark Pocan. Anybody who considers themselves a progressive. They should be strategizing, and they're not. You know what they're strategizing to do? To not help you. They're trying to figure out a way to get out of doing this. You know what? What's violence is you making excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse. This time, bad words equal violence for not doing the bare minimum that's expected of you and hashtag forced to vote, and for kicking down at those that are punching up at you. When I come at AOC, I'm punching up. She's the most popular member of Congress with the most power, and she's powerful. I'm a jagoff comedian in my garage. I got no power except the truth. Whatever power the truth has, I have that. And that was enough to make her flip out and start flailing and start gaslighting and lying at a nuclear speed. And now she's telling you, I'm selling you out tomorrow. We're done. I'm not ever crossing Nancy Pelosi on this. Johnny Graz? Go ahead, Brian.
I want to mention about that person's tweet. You know, they point out something that I think a lot of times we lose sight of. This is not some crazy ask.
No.
I mean, this is a very, 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 very reasonable ask. And you know, when you see these Twitter threads, which I know we've all been, you know, spending a good amount of time on Twitter, like people in other countries are looking at this and they're just going, what's the problem? Of course they should do this. How are you guys? This is a no-brainer. How are you guys not have what we have?
In the middle of a deadly pandemic, how is this controversial? How is someone accusing you of using words are violence if you're just pressuring them to do what they said they were going to do when they got there? That's desperate. That's someone who's scared. This is working. Keep pressuring her. Keep calling her office. Keep tweeting at her. Keep letting AOC know that we see what she's doing. And we're going to hold her accountable because we're her constituents. And so she tweeted this out, right? She tweets out, and to be 100% honest, could there be a bigger garbage lead up to a fucking bullshit thing? It was during this time. Johnny Graz says, this is the tweet in which AOC completes her journey from standard bearer to standard barrier. Whoa. Ron, you didn't write that. Aren't you a little jealous?
That's very clever wordplay. Hats off to Johnny Graz.
You'd think it'd get more likes than 351. That should be doing well. It's getting. I bet it's being suppressed. Suppressing tweets that's violence.
Well, folks are seeing it now in real time. They can go over and give it a like.
That's violence. Suppressing tweets is violence. What's more violent than denying health care in the middle of a deadly pandemic while watching 346,000 people die? Oh, right. The F word. Boy, did AOC not think this one through. These are women calling her out. I have never physically recoiled in disgust at a tweet before this one. And Graham Elwood weighs in on AOC and says, are you sure you're from the Bronx? You sound like some rich kid crybaby. That's exactly what she sounds like. So there you go. There's AOC, again, gaslighting, lying, and now she's obfuscating and trying to use the term. She's trying to paint herself as a victim of a YouTube comedian telling her to F off. It's pathetic. The progressive movement is pathetic. There is no movement. Bernie Sanders threw it away, got nothing for it. AOC is going to vote for Nancy Pelosi without getting anything. The squad's going along. What are they doing? What have Ron? I'm not kidding. What have they done? It's one of those things where they'll allow the squad to vote against something that it doesn't make a difference, right? Like you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, well, and this kind of gets back to what you and Ben were talking about earlier. I mean, there's these kind of like small optics things where it's like, okay, that's not a bad thing. That could help. But if you're not going to do anything with it, then what's the point? Okay, so we have these exemptions for pay-go. All right, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But if we're not going to do something with that, like, I don't know, say, let's get a vote on healthcare in a pandemic, then what's the point?
You know, I just got a text. Someone named Red Ryan tweeted out, I forgot this. Do you know that Alexander AOC tweeted out when John McCain died?
Oh, yes.
She said, John McCain's legacy represents an unparalleled example of human decency and American service. As an intern, I learned a lot about the power of humanity and government through his deep friendship with Senator Kennedy. He meant so much to so many. My prayers are with his family. But, so then Red Robin says, according to AOC, a war criminal like John McCain's legacy was an example of human decency, but her left-wing critics are violent. That speaks volumes. You are correct. I'm going to give that a retweet. And I'm just sick and tired of people saying we have to organize more for this. No, the moment is here now. We're in the middle of a deadly pandemic. Has overwhelming support. Majority of Republicans are for Medicare for all. 90% of Democrats are for Medicare for all. 72% of the country's for it. The time is now. The organizing has been done. It's all done. We did it. It's done. It's done. And now we need to force a vote and primary the fuckers who don't go for it. That's it. It's all done. This shit that we have to go convince more people is ridiculous. Ron, do you agree with me on this?
Oh, big time. And we can look into other countries. The NHS was voted down 21 times before it finally got through. Canada had to get their system one province at a time. So, you know, and I know like those countries have different systems than we do. So it's not like totally like line up neck and neck. But the moral of it is we have to throw everything in the kitchen sink at this thing because we're going up against one of the most powerful entities in the world, the insurance industry in the United States.
And Big Pharma.
And Big Pharma. And they are not going to concede anything without a fight to the bitter end. So this idea that like whenever you have power or have any kind of leverage, you should wait is absolutely insane. It's the equivalent of like, hey, it's second down and short, let's punt.
That's exactly what they're doing. They're not even using their power, even in the littlest way. And it's disgusting. And I'm calling them out. And this idea that the DSA is the one who's organizing for Medicare for all and we have to defer to them, they don't have a strategy to get you Medicare for all. They don't have one. Ask them. What's your strategy? Their strategy used to be to force a floor vote until Jimmy Dore came up with it, and then they fucking abandoned it. And then they start tweeting negative shit about me. That somehow I didn't support Bernie Sanders in the primary. I made 5 pro Bernie Sanders videos. Anyway, it's just nuts. I've got 100 Medicare for all videos on my channel. 100, literally. Go count them. And this idea that the DSA has some secret strategy that we're going to fuck up. They have no strategy. Now, I like the DSA's goals. We all have the same goals. They have no strategy. Zero. What is it? When is the time? Ask them. If you talk to somebody from the DSA and they say, we just disagree on strategy, what is your strategy? And what is your timeline? They don't have one. Same thing with the nurses union. Where are they on this? Why aren't they jumping on board on this hashtag force the vote? They have a different strategy. What is their timeline? Ask them. They don't have one. And nobody supports the nurses union more than me, but shame on them for not getting on board this moment. Shame on the DCA for tweeting out negative shit about this moment and not getting on board and betraying their own manifesto. The DSA is at this moment betraying their own manifesto because they don't like Jimmy Dore and they want to keep access to AOC. It's disgusting. And you should feel shamed. And I'm sure that most of the DSA members are for doing this. They'd like to do something. Well, that's not how it works, Jimmy. We have to take a vote. Then why are the leaders of the DSA shitting on this moment instead of pushing it? Because they don't have a fucking strategy. I've asked their strategy. They don't have one. You know what they have? They have ad hominem attacks against the guy who came up with a strategy. That's what the DSA has right now in this moment. And shame on them and shame on anybody who's not on board this moment. This isn't a disagreement of strategy. You don't fucking have one. You're lying. You don't have a strategy. And I'm not reaching out. I'm calling you out. I'm calling out the left, the people who claim to want this fight their whole life. It's here, and they ran for cover. So I'm calling them out and shaming them. Shame on the DNC, shame on the DSA, shame on the nurses union. Where the fuck are you? I don't need you to be my friend. Where the fuck? I'm asking you to answer for your own self. Hey, everybody, this is the part where I tell you where all our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then this is why I tell you to join our premium program and get extra content, but nobody's got a fucking job. So just enjoy the video.